Hello and welcome to another episode of the DTF podcast. That is the Dauster, T.O. and Fanta podcast. It is currently 10:21 Eastern Standard Time, the only legitimate time zone on Tuesday, September 20th. My name is Rob Dauster. I have with me Terrence Oglesby. I have with me John Fanta. We have a lot that we need to get into today. Emoni Bates got arrested. There is an age limit change potentially coming down the pipe from the NBA draft. We got to talk about realignment. We have a couple of questions that we asked you guys, and I think one of them is going to be a lot of fun to get into. The most talented team that has missed the NCAA tournament in the last 5 years. I have a lot of options. A lot of blue bloods are on that list. Before we get into all of that, though, let me introduce my co-host, John Fanta from Fox Sports, Terrence Oglesby, who is the Clemson legend, the sniper, the rifleman. What's your nickname?
Rifleman, sniper. You pick one. I'll go with it.
Bucket getter, certified bucket getter. What's going on, gentlemen? How we doing?
Doing okay after a therapy Monday as a Cleveland Browns fan. Don't want to get into it too much, but for those of you who know me and listen to this podcast, my goodness gracious, just in a state of shock and sadness. Losing a 13-point lead in the final 2 minutes of a football game should never be acceptable, is not acceptable, inexcusable, and we lost it to Bobby D's son's New York Jets. What a freaking joke. What a freaking disgrace. I digress, but I'm doing okay.
To be clear, my son doesn't actually like the Jets. We were watching that game and he decided he liked the green team that was named after the airplanes. I was rooting for your dogs, Fanta. I had them. Tia, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Let's pretend that you didn't play basketball, you played football. Let's pretend that you were a running back. Let's pretend that you are in a situation where you are playing a game. It is under the 2-minute warning. The team that you are playing against has no timeouts, and you, from about the 20-yard line, you get a run. You're heading towards the end zone. It's wide open. They're letting you score because they want to try to get the ball back. What do?
Depends on if I'm on my own fantasy team, first off. Because I was playing a guy who had Nick Chubb in that situation, and of course he gets the touchdown, loses the game. There should have been something taken off. Football, I would probably kneel it. You gotta win.
I would 1,000% take that thing into the end zone. 1,000%. Yeah, no doubt about it.
Yeah,
I'm out for the glory, man.
Yeah, but Nick Chubb's gonna get paid regardless.
Yeah.
You got to go ahead and get down.
Well, this is a basketball podcast, but let me be very clear. If you're blaming the most valuable player on the team, if you want to say that he should have lied down and just taken the tackle and himself and let the clock run, okay, that's not on him, though. He's not a game clock manager. He's a football player, okay? And he's made smart decisions. He's the best player on that team. They wouldn't be who they are without him. You missed an extra point. You gave up an 80-yard pass. You couldn't recover an onside kick after you call the timeout. How many times, guys, in basketball and football do coaches use a timeout and then the timeout actually backfires on them because you're giving the other team more time to figure things out? All of these things and more are much worse reasons than a running back deciding to lay down or not go in. And if you're going to blame it on him, you are an absolute idiot. Idiot.
I will say this. It's just another example for the Cleveland Browns this season where it was not a happy ending. All right. We got it quite a bit.
Rob, are you kidding me right now, Rob?
The digs keep coming.
How are you going to segue us now?
Yeah. I was about to say, how's this transition going to go?
Because you're going from one legal matter to another, I think.
Well, yeah, we're gonna talk about that. I do want to put together a couple of programming notes really quick. If you guys are interested at all in buying some Field of 68 merch, like a pull out your Torvik t-shirt, shout out to T.O. for that one. Our merch store just opened up. It's fieldof68.shop. If you use the promo code touchdown, you get 20% off at checkout with your first order. We'll have the link in the description below. As always, make sure that you go and check out the Field of 68 Daily. That is our newsletter. It comes out every morning, 8:30 a.m. from Monday through Friday, all year round. So if you are a college hoops junkie and you are not subscribed to that, you are missing out. It is run by my former boss over at NBC Sports, Mike Miller. We have Tristan Freeman of Busting Brackets, Riley Davis, Sean Paul, Greg Waddell. Some of the best writers in the industry are
They do an
running
excellent
that thing.
job.
They do an excellent job. It's the first thing I read every single morning when I get to my desk and I get to my computer. And lastly, the Almanac comes out Monday, September 26th. The promo code there is HOOPS. You get 20% off if you pre-order. So that gives you 6 more days to pre-order and save yourself $4 on getting the Almanac. 800 pages, 600,000 words. We spoke to every single one of the 363 Division I head coaches to put that thing together. It is an absolute beast. I'm really proud of the work that we've done to put that thing together and get it out. All right, we'll talk about the age limit in a minute because I have a lot of thoughts on that. First and foremost, Emoni Bates. He was arrested on Sunday night. He was driving a car. I believe he ran a stop sign. Maybe he ran through a red light, but he was pulled over. They found a gun in the car. The gun apparently had an altered ID number on it. He was arrested for 2 felonies. He spent the night in jail. He was released on bond on Monday morning, and he has since been suspended from the Eastern Michigan team. Eastern Michigan, of course, is in Ypsilanti, which is his hometown, which is where he tried to get out of when he went to Memphis for his freshman season. So I have a lot of thoughts on this. Tio, I'm going to go to you first on this one. Where do you stand on Emoni? What do you think is going to end up happening here? For the record, what his lawyer is saying is that he borrowed the car from somebody and it was not his gun. He did not even know the gun was in the car.
And now he's in a difficult position because now he's got to bail out his boy and say it was his boy's gun. And here's the thing too, whenever I first heard it, I was like, gosh, this kid cannot get it together. There is so much going on. He goes home in the middle of the season and then he transfers back home to where everybody says he needs to get away from. And then this happens. It's like the kid can't get out of his own way. And it's just, first of all, I don't blame the kid for the stuff earlier. I think he's had people that have told him the wrong things. And I think that's hard. This part is more difficult. Did he know the gun was in the car? There's a lot of ifs and did he or did he not involved in this situation? So I feel like we need to reserve a little judgment in our dealings with Emoni Bates and you guys and how you guys have talked to him and how Jeff has described him. He doesn't seem like a brushed off serial number of a gun type of kid. So I actually think it's plausible now that it isn't his. And I hope it isn't his because I've come to a point now where it's like, God, can Emoni Bates catch a break? Like that was the first time since we've been talking about the kid, since we've been covering the kid, where I'm just like, man, he can't get out of his own way. And to be honest with you, where all of this is going, I hope he has a great year. I hope he gets back on the team soon. But obviously, you know, the judicial system and process is going to take a while, which stinks for him. It stinks for his team. But I'll be honest, guys, like the blame lies on him because you need to be a little bit more diligent. You need to know all this stuff. I mean, you have to look in the mirror at some point, right? But there comes a point where it's like, God, come on, Emoni, let's get it together. I need a feel-good story. I'm hoping that this kind of turns the tide a little bit to where he's, I'm not going to say scared straight because he wasn't a bad kid, but it's like, dude, get it together, do what you're supposed to do what you're capable of doing, because he's still a really good player. And he seemed to always be a really good kid. He's just been sheltered from the people that's around it, or they've been sheltering us from the people that's around him. Does that make sense? I don't know how I worded that correctly, but I'm rooting for the kid now. Like, especially if it's what Steve Haney said it was. And Steve Haney's his lawyer, as you referred to.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw this news, I was sad.
Yeah.
It made me sad.
Me too.
It really did. We cover the sport. We cover players and coaches, but we're humans too. And at the end of the day, I want these kids to do what they strive to do and live out a dream. And anybody who doesn't want that is wrong. And for me, I just think when you look at the potential that this kid had at one point, and I know it's just a word. I know potential is just a word. But when you look at the setup, right, at 14, 15 years old, you sit there and say, could be great, right? Could be great. The contrast from that to where he currently is, not only as a basketball player, but more importantly, a human being, could not be sharper. It could not be greater of a difference. Just when you thought what has been the toughest of scenarios for Emoni now to fight through it and get his career on track. The reason why T.O.'s saying I just want him to get a break is because right now he's living a nightmare even worse than he could have dreamed of living. And that's where my heart breaks. Because, guys, at the end of the day, when we talk about people being adults and you're a man and you're 18, he's 18 years old, the fact of the matter is this, is that throughout his last 5 years of development, throughout any person's development in this age group, 15, 16, 17, now he's 18 years old, you are still getting influenced. You are getting told what to do to a degree. You're getting advice from people inside your home and around your home. And the fact of the matter is, and I don't want to be too critical here because that stays between Emoni and his family, but it is very clear. It is very clear that, and I'm not going to point fingers at one person. It's just clear that throughout these last couple of years, that there are some directions in which this kid has either turned himself or been turned to that frankly just aren't the best directions from my opinion. I wish him the damn best. I wish Emoni Bates the very best, but I can't help but look at this story and say, I hope that what he's saying is true, that those weren't his guns, and I hope he gets back on the court. But between legal proceedings and now the mental health effect that this could have on him, waiting and seeing, this is Emoni Bates' worst nightmare, and I really feel bad for the kid.
Yeah. To me, this is exactly why it was a horrible idea to go back to Ypsilanti. Why it was a horrible idea to go back home when you're Emoni Bates and you're trying to rebuild your image and rebuild your brand and rebuild who you are as a basketball player, to put you back into a situation where you are hanging around people that are going to have guns with altered ID numbers on them, right? Like it was a bad idea to go the way that he went. And at some point you have to lay the blame at the feet of Emoni. Like he's his own man, right? When you're 18, 19 years old, you got to take some responsibility for your decisions, some responsibility for the things that you do. But I think over the course of his entire life, some of it his own fault, some of it through the fault of people around him, some of it through the fault of people like us that laid a certain level of hype and expectation on him that was probably unfair for a kid his age. A lot of people have failed him, but I just, it's sad, man.
Yes, it is.
It's sad and it's frustrating. And I do think that I hope he figures it out, because that's a waste of.
He's still a puppy.
Yeah, it's a waste of talent and a waste of ability. Like, and the thing we forget about this, right, is it feels like he's been around forever, right? It feels like he's been in the public eye forever because he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated when he was 14 years old. But like he's not even 19. The reason why he's back in college right now is because he was born on January 28th, 2004, which means that he was too young by 4 weeks to go to the 2022 NBA draft. He's not even 19 years old. So there's still a lot of room for him to grow and develop and mature. And when you think about all of the dumb things that you did when you were 18 years old, like everybody listening to this, me included, I am glad that I did not have the public spectacle on me when I was kind of figuring things out at that age. So I do want to talk to you guys about one thing though, because Dinos Dragonis, who's a guy that I like, who's done good things for me. He runs a lot of a lot of camps. He put out a tweet where he said, "This Emoni Bates news is beyond sad. It's heartbreaking. What's also problematic here is all the adults and corporate entities like ESPN's Paul Biancardi and Adam Finkelstein, who helped create an ecosystem of entitlement around the kid and gave him a false sense of NBA future glory." I pretty strongly disagree with Dino's take there for a couple of reasons, and I want to get you guys' take on this. But first and foremost, like, I think in this specific instance, you are right that the hype around Emoni got a little bit out of control. His father was able to find a way to snag 2 shoe deals with Nike, one for a prep school that he created, and one for the AAU program that he built, Bates Fundamentals. I think that certainly did not help things. I think that telling a 14-year-old that he's going to be the next Kevin Durant is the wrong way to do it and the wrong way to handle things. But I do think overall, like, the culture around AU basketball, for the most part, like, if you look at the kids that are coming out these days, for the most part, all of these like 5 stars and the kids that are top 10 recruits are generally really good kids. And I do think that part of that is because if you look at like the most recent generation of NBA stars, you have a lot of guys that are they've made it cool to be smart, to be business savvy, to be cognizant of your brand, to be generally good people, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
So I think that it's wrong to kind of paint. There's a lot of things that we need to change in grassroots culture and the way that we handle young, up and coming 15 to 16 years old. We talked about that after the Boozer and what's the other kid's name? T.O. the game from
Flag.
Yeah. So we talked about that a couple of podcasts ago, and I don't think we necessarily need to rehash that. I just think overall, in general, the system works pretty well. I think it's wrong to criticize an institution for one example that did not work out the way that we wanted it to. Is that fair?
Totally fair. You're absolutely right. I mean, you can't just take an outlier and make it what the theme is.
Yeah.
So I disagree with that tweet. I think it's an overreaction in the moment, and that's all that needs to be said about it. And for the most part, guys, that's what social media is. It's one big overreaction. It's why we love it, but it can be divisive. I mean, and I think that tweet is in the wrong, because you're generalizing something that is, this is unlike any sort of case that we've really seen. I mean, again, you said it. It seems like he's been around forever. The guy, I know that you went like this, but like the guy was proclaimed to be the next Kevin Durant at 14 years of age.
No, I hear you, and I agree with you. I think the most apt compare, and I wasn't shaking my head disagreeing. I was thinking, like, I think the most apt comparison is Renardo Sidney, who at 14 was, everyone was like, oh, this guy's the next Magic. This guy's the next Chris Webber.
Good name, Paul.
He had a lot of very, very similar situations. He ended up moving and going to LA to go play on like a superstar AAU team. And
Finkelstein called him Felipe Lopez, and I was like, that's a good one.
That's a good one too.
Yep.
I flipped. He was a little bit before my time, but I do think that, like, it's this generation.
The hype was insane, though.
He's this generation's Renardo Sidney in my mind.
I have a question for Terrence, because he's a former player, and at an ACC level, I just and I'm thinking of how we move forward in this discussion. And my question to you, T.O., is if Emoni Bates came inside your office right now and sat across from you, what would your message be to Emoni Bates in the here and now?
Like, what would be the next move, or
what do you tell him?
There's not a whole lot he can do. That's the big thing. Like, there's not a whole lot he can do. Like, he needs to get out from under this rock. He needs to go have a great season, and then he needs to figure out his next move. Like, he needs to stay in his dorm room, not go out, which is pretty much what everybody thought he was doing anyway. He was basically been in a cocoon since he was 14. And a lot of the mistakes that here's the thing too. All right. So this is kind of self-reflective right now, but one of the best things I ever did in my life was going to Europe instead of staying at Clemson. And one of the reasons why, for my life, not my basketball career, that's a majorly different thing. It was one of the best things in my life. It was one of the worst things for my basketball career. The reason it was one of the best things for my life was because now all my mistakes were my own. And now Emoni's figuring out, like, my mistakes are my own right now. Nobody can hide me. Nobody can figure it out before it gets to the press. My mistakes are my own. So now there's immediate repercussions for his actions. His dad's not going to be able to fix this. Whoever else is not going to be able to fix this. But he needs to get a way to where his actions are his own. Nobody else is bothering him. And we talked a little bit about this before it was announced that he was going to Eastern Michigan. Like, what's he going to do? I hope he gets away. And what does he do? He goes right back home. So, but now he's created a situation through obviously due process. Let's obviously due process is involved, but he's created a situation where it's like nobody can save him right now. Steve Haney's going to try, but it's like your situation, you've created that yourself.
Yeah, I get that. You're right. And innocent until proven guilty. And there certainly is the plausible excuse that this was somebody else's car. This wasn't his gun. It would be very easy to determine if that is his car, right? All you have to do is just check the registration. But
what would have been great for him, this is kind of off the beaten path, but I heard whispers of him potentially going and playing for a team over in Serbia that has these first round picks every year.
Yep.
And my first is called Mega. I heard whispers of that. And that would have been terrific for him as a person. And when I say that is, it would have been pretty well insulated. He would have had to go to practice every day, and he would have been around a different person, to where, like, Serbians, like, they go to practice. That's what they're doing. They're going there 2 hours in the morning. They're going there 2 hours in the evening. There's not a whole lot of room for nonsense after that. And not only that, if something would have happened, it would have been on him. And now he's got this cocoon around him. That's kind of the, that's kind of what
my thought. And I said this,
he would never have made it. I think he would have come home in a month.
Yeah.
If he could have gotten through it, I think it would have been perfect for him.
I said from the jump that he should have gone to the G League Ignite program. Get away from everything at home. Get away from all of those distractions. Get away from everything and make the main thing be the main thing again. Make basketball be the reason that you're doing things, not whatever else. Once you get to the point that you are at, like a LeBron level or a CP3 level or a Devin Booker level, where you're a star in the NBA and you are established and you're one of the best in the best league in the world, then you can start worrying about, like, I need to add this, I need to add that, I need this shoe deal, I need this cologne deal, I need this brand, I need this, I need that. You need to make it be none of that happens if basketball is not what makes you a superstar.
Is cologne what came to your mind when it came to sponsorships? I'm just curious. Cologne.
I was just going, man.
Okay.
Do you know what else? For it to be the main thing, for him to let the main thing be the main thing, the people in his circle have to let the main thing be the main thing. They need to let him go. You got to let him go. You've got to. What is it? It's the hardest thing. Parents say it all the time. How hard it is to let go. How hard it is to do that. And I think part of it, like, when you get to the level that he was getting hyped up to be, I think that certainly meant that his circle all of a sudden is going to have people wanting to get inside it, to a point that maybe some of the smarter people the people that are inside his household aren't even letting in. You have to remember, there's still some people that really do know what they're talking about, because they've done this. They've been on this road. And I think, in a way, that cocoon has defeated its own purpose in this whole journey. It's sad. It's tough to see. But I also think to go blaming Paul Biancardi and to go blaming Finkelstein for doing their jobs, they're evaluators, guys. They're evaluators. They've gotten evaluations right. They've gotten evaluations wrong. They would tell us that. To simply blame that and say that it's because of corporate opinions and big brands who proclaim these kids to be this, that, and the third. Come on. You could say that he got hyped up to an unreal level, but to start blaming people for his downfall and demise, I fully believe that's short-sighted, because at the end of the day, it is on the not just the kid, but his family and the people closest to him to manage him. Paul Biancardi and Adam Finkelstein are not the reason why Emoni Bates was arrested over the weekend. They're just not.
Yeah, I said this earlier, but there are lots of things that need to get changed in the world of grassroots basketball and AAU basketball, and the way that social media and our culture hypes up some of these 15, 16, 17 years old. That is 100% true. And for the record, the last time that we talked about this, it was because of a column that Fink wrote. I know Fink well enough. I've had conversations with him about this. Like, I don't, he wants that to change. I can't speak on Biancardi. I don't know. I think I've had one conversation with Paul in my life, but I know Fink well enough to know that he wants that to change. So throwing him under the bus is probably not something that's fair in this situation. And I'll end it with this. There have been plenty of incredibly overhyped players over the course, like the last 10 years, that have come out and gone on to be fine. Yeah, maybe every single one of them is not reaching the levels of Kevin Durant, right? But there's lots of top 10, top 15 recruits that have had those shoe company deals, that have had this, that, and the third, that have made it to the NBA, that have made life-changing money, that have been able to alter the direction that their family path goes because of their ability, despite the fact that they're considered.
Wasn't Josh Jackson the number one player in his class?
Yeah, he was. That's another situation where
Well, but I mean, but with that being all said, he's made a lot of money and he's turned out.
He's made a lot of money, and that is
like our standard for success needs to come down a little bit.
If you make the league, if you're identified as a 16-year-old and you make the NBA, you've made it. You've 100% made it. Just because you didn't find the right fit, or injuries took this away, or you weren't able to be more than just like a sixth man on an NBA rotation. You don't realize how fucking hard it is to be the sixth man on an NBA team.
Yeah.
Do people realize that? If you're one of the 200 best in the world at your job, which means, like, let's just put it like this. There are 10 classes of players generally in the NBA, right? About 10 years. And if you're one of the if you're a starter in the NBA, just a regular old run-of-the-mill starter, the worst starter on your team, you're one of the top 150 players in the world, right? And if you are a top 10 player in your class and you end up as one of the top 150 players in the world, you lived up to your hype. Like, I don't know. It's hard to explain this to people. Not everybody is going to end up being fucking Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
Making the league, having an 8-year career in the NBA, if you're projected as a 5-star recruit, then you probably outperformed what the expectation was for you in your basketball career. People need to understand that. It is very, 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 the hardest job to get in the entire world is an NBA basketball player. There's 510 of those jobs, if you include the two-way contracts. Drives me crazy.
Bold statement.
Yep. Speaking of the NBA and the NBA draft, it sounds like
nice transition.
There's going to be some level of change coming here. Shams put out a report that made it seem like the one and done rule was going to end up going away. The age limit is going to come down to 18, and it could happen as soon as the 2024 NBA draft. Woj, later on Monday night, put out a report that said, pump the brakes. It's probably not going to happen for a while because there are trades that have been agreed to with future draft picks based off of what the current setup is, and that the NBA doesn't want to do away with the one and done rule.
Why wouldn't they?
For the new CBA, this is why I won't believe that the one and done rule is going away until I see the one and done rule go away. There is no motivation for either side in these negotiations to have this go away. Take the owners, the billionaire owners, the people that are really, really smart about their money and ruthless about their money. Do you think that they want to pay an extra year upfront of development in the 18th for kids that are 18 years old coming out of high school? Do they want to pay for an extra year of development while also losing on the back end a year of that kid's prime when you can take advantage of what you were paying for of that development? Remember, in the NBA, you basically have 9 years of control over a player before he can go to market and he's just a pure free agent.
That's insane.
You want to get kids older so that you can have them later in their career, as opposed to getting them earlier when you lose control when they're 27 or 28. You want them to their 29 or to their 30. That's what NBA owners want. They don't want to pay for an extra year of development. But here's the other thing. You don't want to pay for that development. The NBA owners, if the kids come in a year earlier, that is an extra year of development that all of these guys have to pay. Then you have the players who are on the other side of the negotiation. It is a zero-sum game when it comes to A, jobs, and B, money available for professional basketball players at the NBA. As soon as you allow 18-year-olds coming in, this concept of like the double draft, where you have the best players from two different draft classes entering in the same year. That means there's going to be fewer jobs available for all of those veterans that are on the fringe, right? All those guys that are currently part of the NBA Players Union, there's a lot of them that are going to be out of a job when you have that double draft. And two, the money is going to go to these younger kids instead of the older guys, right? So there's no incentive for either side of the CBA to get rid of the one and done rule. All the incentive for both of those sides is to have it go to a 2 and done rule. That's when you look strictly at incentives and motivations for the two sides that are negotiating the CBA. That is what keeping those kids in college longer is better for both of those sides. Now, my guess is that Adam Silver wants to do two things. He wants to bring players in as quickly as possible because he thinks it's the right thing to do, right? And it probably is, to allow these kids to be able to get to the league as quick as possible. He also wants to bring all of that development in-house. And he's been vocal about this. Like, he wants to have the best players training with professional athletes, which makes a lot of sense. When you go to college and you're working out, it's very like there's time limits. You got to have, what is it, like a 2-hour limit per day, 20-hour limit per week or something like that, CO. Yeah. And you're not doing it year round. There's different training sessions, and you have guys that are there developing you to win basketball games now, as opposed to developing you for you to be what you could be the best long term, if that makes sense. So I think Adam Silver wants this, but it doesn't benefit either side of the CBA. Like, so I will believe that the one and done rule,
unless they were able to add something to the G League structure.
That's right.
Which would make sense because the G League's good now. Like, they've done a nice job with that league. Sorry to interrupt you, Rob. Keep going. I hear what you're saying, but we're talking about 18-year-olds that are going to be first-round picks. They're going to be eligible for the draft. So you're drafting an 18-year-old. His first contract goes until he's 22. His second contract goes until he's 27. Right now, all of a sudden, you got to pay that third contract, that the max deals or whatever, until they're 32, which means they're more likely to have to get another max deal until they're 37. You're adding it costs more for NBA owners to bring these kids in when they're younger, which is why you're not a billionaire by being done with your money. So that's why I'll believe that the one and done rule is going away when I see the one and done rule going away. That's just where I'm at with it. I'm not sure that logic of the contracts by 1 year, I'm not sure I completely buy it, because they're going to be paying somebody anyway. And there's a salary cap there for a reason. There's a salary minimum too. Like, you've got to be able to pay guys. So the only thing, I just think when it went into effect, what was it? 2000, when did it go into effect? What year was that, Rob?
2005.
2005. Like, the G League was in its infancy. Like that, I think that's kind of your turning point. Every team has a feeder system going on. I think that could be the turning point for this. I think the kids should be able to go. I know that there's been a lot of talk about, when I say talk, I mean like just with me and my buddies, basically. Like, I love the baseball rule. Either let them go out of high school or they got to stay for 3 years. Huge fan of that. Because 3 years, but 3 years they're graduating. Wasn't that the point the whole time? I mean, the NBA doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah, but like, here's the problem. Here's the problem with that.
I love it just from a hypothetical perspective.
And here's the thing about that is, like, Trae Young would not have been a one and done, or Trae Young would not have been a straight out of high school guy. And he comes in and he averages 30 points and 10 assists, and then you're going to tell him he's got to be in the college for 2 more years.
Yeah, it would make for great theater.
What would
That's worse Young, freedom? That's worse freedom.
Let me ask you guys this: if Trae Young, if this rule was in place, Trae Young, who averaged 30 points and 10 assists as a freshman, if he was forced to stay till his junior year, what does he average as a junior in college?
I don't know. It'd be Ralph Sampson numbers.
41.
42 points and
42
17
points.
Assists.
Here's my deal with this, okay? Just
and Oklahoma still would not be able to get out of the first 4.
Right, exactly. Yeah, they had first round loss. And wasn't it to Rhode Island?
Oh, yes. Danny Hurley is one NCAA tournament.
Oh boy. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So, yes, for a different discussion during the season. So when I read this report and I just am reading it again, first off, Adrian Wojnarowski is such a perfect source, reporter, whatever you want to say, for the National Basketball Association, because you can totally see in these tweets that someone from the league called Woj and said, hey, Woj, Shams is wrong, or at least we don't, maybe not wrong, but we don't love this. Here's what's really going on. Here's what you need to put out. Now, we can get in the Woj Shams war. That's not what I'm here to say. What I'm here to say
I do not
is,
want to get into that.
I don't want to get involved in
that.
I don't want to get involved in that. I don't want to get involved in that at all. Fun fact, I once saw Shams in Scottsdale while on vacation. He's probably one of the few people that has ever seen me shirtless for several days in a row because I was at the pool and he was at the pool. And so he got a look at this body.
Holy shit.
So
that's great.
Yes, that did happen. Yeah, I was like, I looked across the pool. I'm like, is that Shams? And he's just,
yeah, the whole time.
Okay. So Woj, for the people listening, he was like on his phone nonstop. So Woj says several obstacles and complexities remain, including the league's insistence that players provide medical info, physicals to all 30 teams. And then he proceeds. So if you were reading that, you would say to yourself, okay, so if there's no one and done, that means that the player has to give everything to everybody in the league, right? Whereas currently in the current structure, who controls which medical info gets to which teams?
The agents.
The agents. And I thought to myself reading this, but wait a minute. And Lamar Jackson would agree with me. The agents. Who needs the agents? Oh, that's right. Because behind closed doors, the NBA teams and organizations, folks, don't let them fool you. They're good friends. They're good friends with all of those agents. This was simply language to put out there that states, before we dramatically shift the landscape, our whole goodwill with the agents and our good practices and our let us help you help yourself. You scratch our back, we'll scratch yours. That whole partnership that has some direct language in it, but not all direct language in it, this change would crush that, hurt that, it would alter that. And guys, when we're talking about millions and billions and gazillions of dollars, if the system ain't broke, don't go fixing it to a point that you could end up hurting your relationship with those player or agents. And the fact of the matter is this: nobody wants to go rot in Sacramento or potentially Oklahoma City. Like, nobody wants to go rot for an NBA organization. And if you provide your medical info to every single team, all that info is out there to every team, you're going to have far less control of your potential landing spot when you don't have that system in place where player agents are giving that info out to certain teams. That's what my takeaway from this was. Agree or disagree?
I'm a big fan of what you just said. Just make sure everybody sees it. And here's another thing. It could help those Sacramentos and things like that. Like is that kind of what you were referring to? Like,
well, I'm saying that so to me, I don't see that big of a deal with everybody seeing the information, but Woj's reports suggest that the agent system and the one and done system is still benefiting the league. So I think there's two things that you can look at here. I think you can both say that the draft age getting lowered, like, it is what it is. Give the players the freedom to choose to go straight to the draft or straight to Ignite or whatever it is. I think, T.O., that this is the whole purpose of Ignite and the G League. The G League has been planning for this. The G League's gotten better as a league. and has gotten better at actually developing talent. Like they've gotten closer to what the minors are
There's a
in
plan.
baseball. Whereas the G League used to be a lost hole. It's not anymore. It actually is a developmental system. Adam Silver wants this. He should want it. I get that. You could both say that lowering the age is appropriate while also saying that one and done should remain in place the way it's been.
The only problem with that is if you lower the age limit and keep one and done in place, all you're going to be getting is more situations of like Gigi Jackson finding a way to graduate as a 17-year-old after his junior year in high school and going to college. And all it's going to do is make it 1 year younger for people that are going to do their one and done year. And like, I don't blame him. You know what Gigi Jackson is getting from South Carolina to be able to play this year?
A lot of money.
A lot of money. He's getting Oscar Sheway money. 2 commas with a crooked number in front. Right. So
I don't know how that's going to end up.
Yeah, but all it's going to do is make
it's going to be a hard year.
Like, look,
hard year in Columbia.
Yeah. I think if you're going to get rid of the age limit, right, there should be no one and done. Just let them go straight pro. That's the best thing to do for a lot of these kids. There's a lot of guys that don't belong in college. I think overall it will not having guys like Zion Williamson, not having guys like RJ Barrett, not having guys like Cade Cunningham, like that hurts college basketball to a point. But
can't miss what you never had.
Yeah, but it's also college basketball was fine when J.R. Smith wasn't going and Kobe Bryant wasn't going and Kevin Garnett wasn't going, right? Like it'll help make the guys that are in college more recognizable. We're going to have more stars. We're going to have more Hunter Dickinsons. We're going to have more Armando Baycots. We're going to have more Oscar Sheways and guys that aren't just big guys that are stars in college basketball. There's going to be more recognizable faces. There's one fatal flaw with the sport. It's that it's so hard to know who the best players are year over year because everybody goes pro. Right. All of the guys that you care about, all the guys that you know, all the guys that you fell in love with in March are gone just a couple of weeks later. So I do think that there's part of it where the diehard college basketball fan is going to be more engaged. I have friends that grew up huge college basketball fans that barely watch the sport anymore because they don't know who it is year over year. Kentucky fans are sick of trying to figure out who the hell's on their roster every single season. Duke fans are sick of it too. So I do think that this will help re-engage a generation that fall in love with the player and can see that player coming back over and over and over again. It'll hurt like it will hurt the years where you have these superstars that can get all of these eyeballs and all of this attention when it's not in the month of March. But I do think overall it'll be healthy and more sustainable for the sport to not have to rely on lucking into a Zion Williamson to make yourself more get yourself more attention. Does that make sense?
It does. But so I have 2 things here. One is what is stopping, and I think the answer is nothing. The top percent of the top percent of players are smart to go straight to the NBA. Okay. Like that. I get it. If you're the next LeBron, if you're the next Zion, if you're the next KD, whatever, then in that case, I say go for it. But my thought process is that if you're not in the top percent of the top percent, like I would hope that you would look at the college route and say, I can get in with the university. There's still something to be said about developing under a Cal, under now a Shire, under whoever that coach may be.
Fran McCaffrey. Right. You could stop. Because anytime you bring up Iowa now, I can't take you seriously. That being said, you could play for a coach, right? You could get in with a university. So, hey, you might not realize it, 18-year-old kid, but your parents do, and we do. You could always go back when you're 45 and do whatever you want at that university. They'll fulfill whatever you need to fulfill. You can also make bank. Like you could make bank in your 1 year in college. You might be able to make not the same amount of money, but a lot of money, get in with a school, develop that year, and then you get drafted that after that year. Like to me, I look at that situation and say, I still think there's value to going the one and done route over just going straight to the draft. I think you're going to see the top percent of the top percent. But the other thing is this, guys, does it make sense? And if so, how much sense does it make for Duke and Kentucky
to look harder at the top 30 to 40 recruit as opposed to the top 5 recruit if that top 5 or 10 recruit who they think they're getting says, no, I'm going straight to the NBA.
That was the hang up back when Duke won the championship with Shire and Nolan Smith and Zubek, and that was all top 40 kids.
Yeah. And if you look at what Baylor's doing, you look at what Villanova was doing, that's kind of like the sweet spot is you get that like top 50 to 75 kid that stays for 3 to 4 years and you win national championships.
Right.
The last thing that I'll say about this, and I'm curious both of your opinions, is I think that the idea that you would eliminate the branding and the attention and the hype and what you can build in terms of your personal brand from a run in March Madness, from playing on national television every night, there's a reason why people are excited to see like someone like a Jaden Akins coming in, some of these top draft picks coming in, like a Paolo Banchero, right? Would he have as much hype? Would there be as much excitement about him? Would he have as much notoriety? Would people give a shit about him coming into the league if he didn't just play for Duke and take Duke to a Final Four? Would there be as much excitement about Jabari Smith if he didn't just average 16 points and shoot 40-something% from 3 for Auburn this past season? You know what I mean? Like, would this be something where you're hurting the excitement and the notoriety and the attention that you get for all of these newcomers coming into your, like, the NBA draft is not going to be the same pomp and circumstance when you don't have these guys with some of these big brands that have just played all this time in college. Like I think the system is working well right now, especially now that NIL is available and all of these kids are going to be able to make a shitload of money when you get to college, right? Like I understand the desire to allow them to have the opportunity to go pro right out of high school. I just think there's going to be a lot more bad decisions made and having those guardrails in place. But I also understand that kind of also makes me sound like an old man. That is kind of like, yeah, we got to keep college basketball alive. No, I think that it makes a lot of sense the way that the system is set up.
And it's not going to get hurt. It's not going to hurt college basketball competitively, which we've gone over. Like look at the national champions. We've talked about this on this podcast ad nauseum. It's not going to hurt the sport competitively. Veteran teams are winning the national championship for the most part. So I got to tell you guys, like, I can't wait for actual basketball. I can't wait for the season to start. We've talked about an arrest, and now we've talked about this rule. So it's guys, we are, as we do this podcast, 48 days away.
God.
Yep.
I'm excited.
I'm very excited.
All right, let's roll through some questions. We did get some questions coming in. The first one, this is, I didn't write down who this one was from, but the question was, once realignment changes, the ones that have already been made, officially go through, meaning Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC, Houston, UCF, BYU, and Cincinnati going to the Big 12, and UCLA and USC going to the Big 10, which conference is going to be the best basketball conference in college basketball? Tio, I'm going to you first.
The toughest to win games in is going to be the Big 12. The most talented would arguably be the SEC. Because I thought about this. If you look at Texas, Oklahoma, they have top-end talent. Now, Porter Moser's taking a minute, but he's going to get there. Texas always gets these 5-star recruits and these highly rated transfers. They're going to be good. I'm not sure they're going to win the SEC ever, but it's going to be a really good league. But that Big 12, man, if you look at that roster up and down, Kansas, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, now you add Cincinnati, and Wes is starting to get things done. You add a BYU team that's underrated, that gets a bunch of dudes out on the West Coast. You look at all these different teams. Central Florida is a sleeping giant. It's the biggest enrollment in the state of Florida. People don't realize that. That is a sleeping giant. It is a commuter school, sure. It's starting to change a little bit. They're starting to put more dorms on campus. That's a sleeping giant. And lest I forget, Houston with the Fertitta money and the Sampsons running the ship. That's a big time program too. The Big 12 is going to be a bear when realignment hits.
Think about it like this: Houston, Baylor, and Kansas, the way things are currently going, could all enter every single season based like, yeah, there's a real shot that they could each get a 1 seed, right? And then go and look at it to put the Big 12 in perspective. Let's tie a bow on this, Fanta. Do you know who finished in last place in the Big 12 last year? Last place.
Lay it on me.
West Virginia and Bob Huggins. You know who made it into the Hall of Fame last year, the year that he finished in last place
Mr. Huggins.
in the Big 12. Huggy Bear. Iowa State finished tied for 7th in the Big 12. They were the 8th seed in the Big 12 tournament. I'm sorry, they were the 7th seed in the Big 12 tournament. They finished behind Oklahoma State. They should have been the 8th seed if Oklahoma State was eligible. Iowa State made it to the Sweet 16. That league is a fucking buzzsaw. It's insane.
Yeah.
The Big 12.
Brutal.
The Big 12 is already college basketball's best conference and has been the last couple of years. And, if you want to make the counter argument that everybody always makes, well, what did they do in March? I'm sorry. They have accounted for the last 2 national champions. And in 2019, Texas Tech made the final. So
Can I add to that, in 2020, Baylor and Kansas both would have been 1 seeds, and Kansas was the overwhelming favorite to win the national title. And do you know who lost in the 2018 national title game? Who lost?
Yep. Well, in the 2018 national championship game, Kansas lost. So
wait, no, they lost some.
Kansas lost in the Final Four to Villanova, and then Michigan lost. Kansas got to the Final Four.
There you go.
Kansas lost to maybe one of the great college basketball teams ever in Villanova. The point is, the Big 12 has had.
The point is, shut the fuck up, Rob. Get your facts straight.
Yeah. Well, that's all right. No, you're fine. The Big 12 has had a team in the Final Four in every year since 2016, because Oklahoma made it in 2016 with Buddy Hield. The Big 12 has dominated college basketball. And they've done it in March. They've done it when it matters most. That league is the toughest. That league is loaded with talent. And you're going to add big-time programs. Houston, it seems like it's just a matter of time until they're in a national final. They might be in the national championship game this upcoming year. In fact, if you ask me today, who are the 2 teams that I could see meeting for a title, I'll stay committed. I'll say I think Houston could end up meeting Kentucky or Gonzaga for all the marbles in college basketball.
All the marbles.
So to me, guys, think about this. The Big 12 already owns Monday nights in college hoops, and on Saturdays, they're featured in the biggest of games. Like when Kansas is facing Texas Tech, how big of a game that is. How about the fact now that you're going to have other matchups in this conference? What's going to happen, guys, when Kansas heads to Provo for the first time and faces BYU? You want to talk about an unbelievable atmosphere. And Cincinnati, you called UCF a sleeping giant. I think Cincinnati is a sleeping giant. That program has had a couple of down years for a variety of reasons. Guys, that fan base, the support that they have, what they just did in college football only helps them monetarily. Cincinnati is going to be back in basketball. Wes Miller's got them on the right track. They're just getting started. You already were the best conference in college basketball, and you are adding really valuable programs. You might say that in football, there's some hurt because they lose Texas and Oklahoma. But to me, in all this realignment, and I'm not UCLA, USC, I don't love it for them in basketball. I just don't love it in that particular sport. I think it benefits Big Ten football more than it does basketball. It's just my opinion. In the Big 12, though, I don't think anybody benefited more by this alignment than the Big 12, because like you said, Tio, you said that you couldn't see Texas ever winning the SEC. Well, my counterpoint is I could see one of these schools, if they take off to the moon, threatening in the Big 12. And when you add assets to your league, you want those assets to be national championship contenders. And the fact is that these programs that they're adding at their best can be on that pedestal.
Yep, I agree. And to your point about BYU, they play in what is essentially an NBA arena and put 20,000 people in the stands for home games in the WCC. What do you think they're going to do when they have Kansas or Baylor or Houston or Texas Tech or any of these other programs coming to town? All right.
Quick question. Who's going to have more fans attend games in the Big Ten? Northwestern or UCLA?
UCLA.
No shot.
It might be Northwestern. Nobody goes to UCLA games.
That's bad,
Have
man.
you seen some of these pictures coming out about their football games at the Rose Bowl?
Nobody
It's
goes
like
to
3,000.
Oh, were you saying football games, or I thought you meant basketball?
I'm saying everything.
Yeah.
Oh, I think Pauley, when Ohio State comes in and when Michigan State comes in, come on, Pauley Pavilion's not going to have a crowd.
Now, if the Lakers are playing the Celtics, they're not going to.
Mm-hmm.
Or if the Rams are playing anybody, they're not going to.
It's
Or
bad.
if the Dodgers are good, they're not going. The Dodgers not basketball season, but you get what
You're
I'm
right.
saying.
The
Like, there's just
USC
too much
crowd
other stuff.
Saturday, that was bad, man. Against South Alabama, that's bad.
Yep. All right. This question comes in from the homie David Bentley. If you could see one and done player stay in college for 3 years during their career, who would it be and why? Fance, I'm going to you first on this one.
Michael Beasley. Michael Beasley.
So good.
So good. And I think he would have delivered Kansas State a championship. And so for that reason, I'm going to go with Beasley because it's unique. It's a different player than all your Duke one and dones. I pulled some notes together on Beasley because yes, he was so good. But folks, in 1 year of college basketball, a power forward was averaging 26 points per game, almost 13 rebounds a game. He had 3 stocks per game, meaning a combined 3 steals and blocks. All right. This man was a beast.
Is that a thing?
It is in my
It
book.
is now. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, stocks, man. It is a thing, and he was a beast. And in 1 year, he was a consensus. It wasn't even like there was no doubt that he was a consensus first team All-American. How in the hell did he lose in the first weekend of the NCAA tournament? If that doesn't sum up the tournament, I don't know what does. The man was averaging 26 and 12 per game. In year 3, he would have been averaging 35 and 18 or 20. Like, if I could have watched a player throughout his career, when you combine Beasley, the Octagon, right, at Kansas State, Manhattan, Little Apple, like, I just think it would have been really fun because it would have. I always love a spotlight on a player and program that doesn't normally get on them.
And he would have played with a veteran, Jacob Pullen, too, underrated.
Boom.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I thought about that, too. They brought in more talent. I'm going Michael Beasley.
The Octagon of Doom would have been rocking. And I do think that Michael Beasley would have he seemed like the kind of guy that really, really enjoyed college life. T.O.,
Oh, yeah.
I thought about this a little bit differently. I probably went the wrong way with it, but I thought about a couple of guys that I wish they should have stayed more.
Oh,
Like Max Christie would have been good this year. I went right to him. I think he would have been better. Cam Reddish, when he was on that 3-headed monster at Duke, he was the one guy that needed, like, if he would have stayed another year, he would have been the dude the following year. Gosh, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them that, like, if you would have stayed a little bit longer and been patient, you would have been really good. One that we were talking about one and done earlier, when that rule went into effect, that's when Greg Oden was coming up. And had he been able to go straight to the league, I can't remember who got the first pick the year prior, but that would have been, he wouldn't have ended up in Portland. Things might have happened differently for him. He wouldn't have broken his wrist going into the Final Four that year. Like, it could have changed the dynamic of his career. So that was another one I thought about.
Was that it was you lose out on Greg Oden and you get Andrea Bargnani?
Yeah. Think about that. So, like, you get Greg Oden instead. And where did Bargnani get drafted? That was New York.
I don't remember. I don't think
he went to New York. No, he went to Toronto. He went to
Toronto.
He went to New York later. He went to Toronto. So now you get a Greg Oden in Toronto. I mean, maybe.
Yeah. My answer for this is obvious and probably lame and cheesy and
UConn guy.
Well, no, I mean it's Zion. Like,
Oh.
can you just imagine what 3 years of Zion would have looked like at Duke? Can you imagine?
It looked like Barkley in Auburn.
Yeah. Can you imagine the amount of attention he would have gotten? Can you imagine how much he could have dominated the sport as a junior at Duke? So I would have loved to see Zion play for 3 years. He was electric. He was special. All right. 2 more questions here. First and foremost, can an All-American team have 5 centers on the first team? I asked this because our buddy John Rothstein put out his first team All-American team, and it had 5 centers on the first team. And maybe I'm on an island.
Threw up in your mouth a little bit.
I could not possibly disagree with this sentiment more. You can get creative how you want to have people lined up positionally, right? Like we can call Oscar Tshiebwe a forward if you want to be able to put him on the same team as Hunter Dickinson. But you have to have some semblance of making it look something like a basketball team that can see the floor, right? You do not have, if you go look at college football's first team All-American team, do you see CJ Stroud and Bryce Young and Caleb Williams and Stetson Bennett all on first team All-American?
Right.
No, you do not. You cannot have a first team All-American team with 5 centers on it. If that happens with the AP, I swear to God, I'm going to AP headquarters and I'm bringing my torches and my pitchforks and we're protesting. We're rioting.
In my traditional heart, I feel like it has to be a lineup. Like you need a point guard, couple wings, then you can go 2 centers because 2, big front court players, that'd be fine. But like it needs to be some semblance of a regular team, in my opinion. So that kind of stinks. That stinks actually.
Yeah, you need guard, forward, center. And if you want to call Oscar Tshiebwe and Armando Bacot forward so you could put Drew Timme at the 5 and have him be a center, I get it. That's fine. I can work with that. I can make it be a thing. You can't have 5 big guys on first team All-American.
No.
Vance, am I wrong?
Like guard, forward, center.
I think what John did was he picked his 5 most talented, most experienced, but you can't. You can't do 5 big men. I just don't like it. I'm more supportive of picking an actual team. You can get flexible positionally, but I also don't think it's as obvious as everybody says with the 5 guys that you're picking. Okay. I just don't. I think Marcus Sasser gets forgotten.
Gotta be on there
because he was hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But man, he is going to have an amazing season. He's on there. I would go Marcus Sasser, Jaime Jaquez, Drew Timme, Armando Bacot, and Oscar Tshiebwe. I play a little bit bigger, but I'm going with those guys. I'm going with those 5 guys on my team. Trace Jackson Davis, great player. He's not a first team All-American at this very moment for me. And Trace might be offended. I wrote a feature on the guy over the summer. I think he's a great player, but I'm not going to put him on there. And then who else? Oh, I left out Hunter Dickinson. Am I throwing shade at the Big Ten for no reason? No, I think that Tshiebwe, Bacot, and Timme have got to be on there. Mm-hmm. But by virtue of positions, guys, I gotta get a lead guard, and then I'll have Jaquez play the 2.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I would probably have Nick Smith first team over Jaquez. I know that T.O. disagrees with you there.
Boy.
I just think that Nick Smith is walking into a situation where by the end of the season, he's going to be playing 38 minutes a game because Muss only plays 6 guys. He's going to be in a situation where he is the guy that is used to create all of the mismatches that they are going to have there. And if you look at what Muss has done over the years, he runs offense through one guy when he can find a mismatch. And I think Nick Smith is going to walk into a situation where he's on a team that is a top 10 team and average something like 17 and 5 assists. And if you're averaging 17 and 5 on a top 10 team, tell me I'm wrong, T.O. Tell me I'm wrong. I see that face.
I have Brandon Miller as the freshman of the year in the SEC.
I like that.
I just
love Brandon Miller. I love Brandon Miller. I honestly,
Nick Smith's very good. Nick Smith's very good.
I think you can make the argument that Brandon Miller might be a better player than Nick Smith, but how good of a player you are doesn't matter when it comes to averaging. I think he's going to walk into a huge situation where he puts up huge numbers on a team that, can we all agree Arkansas is probably going to be top 10 for most of the year?
Yeah.
Well, not for most of the year.
I actually like the pieces around Nick Smith too a lot.
Oh yeah. Your boy Jordan Walsh
fit him really, really well at Arkansas. He's going to have a monster year.
I love that dude.
Yeah, he's really good. Yeah. He's really, really good.
I'm with you on Miller, though. I like that pick.
Yeah,
I like that. I like pick. Miller I'm really intrigued to see what Nate Oates does this year with such a new look Alabama team. But Nate and Muss have been such huge additions to the SEC and the jobs that you could not ask for better coaching hires and by those 2 programs. So as much as to me, guys, I'm curious because Alabama, by some, is getting picked not nearly as high as Arkansas. I've seen Alabama outside the top 25 of some people's polls. Like, I actually like the role of Alabama heading into the season, kind of where they sit than I do Arkansas. I think there's immense pressure on Arkansas. I also think Muss handles things really well. I think Arkansas will be right there. But I think Alabama, some folks are sleeping on them. If you look at polls nationally, there's some people who think, yeah, they'll be okay.
Well, I mean,
they're going to be really good. They're in tier one of the SEC. Us three we were texting the other day. I like Alabama in tier one,
but not everybody does, Terrence. You know that.
Entire one.
Tier one.
You mean tier one?
Tire. I've heard of tire.
What?
First tire. I've heard that.
Hold on.
I've heard that down here. Tier. Tire.
I've never heard it. I've never heard that.
I've heard tire one. What? I've heard it down here. It's not me making shit up. I've heard tire one, tire two, tire three. Now I'm embarrassed because I feel like I'm saying something wrong, but I've heard tire one, tire three.
You are, and you should be.
No, that must be a regional thing.
Well, we might.
Tire one. First tire, second tire. I've heard that.
Oh, that's getting clipped.
Yeah, do it. You can clip it. But I've heard tire one, tire two.
There?
I haven't heard. To be honest with you, you guys saying tier is one of the few times I've heard it.
Let's keep it moving. All right, T.O. Tier one, Arkansas, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky. Like, they're all very close. I think Alabama's on the bottom of that tier, but they're in there. They're in that conversation. Just an all-time moment on the DTF podcast is that
I've heard tier. I've heard tire. I've heard that.
All right.
You've heard both.
I've heard both.
All right, guys. Last question that we got. This actually came in from Mike Miller, who runs the Field of 68 Daily, and it's going to be a segment in the newsletter that they have coming out later on this week. The most talented team in the last 5 years to miss the NCAA tournament was Fanta. Who do you have?
I did some research on this. 2018-19 Alabama did not make the NCAA tournament. 2018-19 Alabama, coached by Avery Johnson. This went downhill. But that team, when you look at the talent that they had Dante Hall. They had Kira Lewis Jr. They had Herb Jones. Okay. They had John Petty. Like, that team, they had Tevin Mack. Alabama in 2018-19 had enough talent to make the tournament, guys. And they did not make it. And that was Avery Johnson's part of his downfall. But that Alabama team was too talented to miss the NCAA tournament. They went 8-10 in the SEC. And to me, when I look at some of the teams that finished above them, South Carolina, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, all finished above that Alabama team. When I just gave you the names of some really good players, talented players, for that team to only go 2 above 500, they ended up having a nice start to the season. But that team was one of the first 4 out in 2019. And talent-wise, like, when you look at some of the teams that they beat early in the season, guys, they started well. They beat Arizona. They beat Penn State. Guys, they beat Kentucky. They beat Kentucky by 2 in early January in 2019. And then they proceeded to lose a bunch of games. LSU, A&M, Tennessee, Baylor, Auburn, Miss State, Florida, A&M. That team lost way too many games down the stretch. They started the season red hot and fell off a cliff. 2018-19 Alabama, with Jones and Petty and Lewis and Mack. That team was too talented to miss the tournament. They were one of the first 4 out. There's my team.
I had 2020 Alabama written down, which was the next year, which was basically the same team plus Jalen Shackelford. I have 4 others too, but so Tio, I'll let you go first.
I got Memphis whenever they won it. What was it? 2020, 2021.
And they won the NIT.
DJ Jeffries was a McDonald's All-American coming out of Olive Branch. He ends up leaving and going back to Mississippi State, and he's still in college, which is kind of wild to me. They had a bunch of really good players. Landers Nolly transferred down from Virginia Tech. He was a good player. Boogie Ellis was there. And then it goes from Duke to Memphis. Now is he at Southern Cal or did he leave? I don't know, but he's
still
been
at
at
USC. He's still there.
He's still at Southern Cal. Damian Ball has turned out to be a good player. Lester Quiones is still a good player. DeAndre Williams. I mean, that was a really talented team. And Musa Cisse, who ended up transferring to Oklahoma State, was also a really good 5-man. It's just another example.
I wrote 6 teams down. One of them was 2020 Alabama, so I have 5 other ones. For my money, the most talented team that didn't make the NCAA tournament was 2021 Duke. They had Jalen Johnson, they had Matthew Hurt, Wendell Moore, Mark Williams, DJ Stewart, Jamin Brakefield, who was transferred to Ole Miss and become a good role player. Henry Coleman averaged 11-7 at Texas A&M last season. Jeremy Roach was on that team. I also had 2021 Kentucky written down. BJ Boston, Olivier Sarr, Isaiah Jackson, Terrence Clark, Jacob Toppin. That was a really talented team that had a bunch of guys that were 5 stars that ended up transferring out and not panning out. 2020 UNC finished under 500 with Cole Anthony, Armando Bacot, Garrison Brooks, and Leaky Black. I thought that team was probably one that needs
bunch
to
of non-shooters.
Yep. 2018 Oregon had sophomore year Peyton Pritchard, Troy Brown, Kenny Wooten, Elijah Brown, some pros on that roster. And then I wrote literally every year Stanford.
Hey, you're right. And that's why Jared Hess has got to put it together this season. I mean, Stanford has got to put together a better year. The Pac-12.
Harrison Ingram coming back is going to be good.
Yeah, Ingram, that's your ticket, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Ingram's one of the most talented players in that league. And guys, the league is not that strong after the top 3 or 4 teams. Like Stanford should finish top 5 or 6 in that league. I don't know if they will. They probably won't.
How long have we been saying that?
Oh, I know. They probably won't.
We've been saying that for 15 years. We've been saying that since Johnny Dawkins first got the job. Oh, this is the year. Yep. Stanford's got it done this year. It's happening this year. All right. This is the year that they finally make it back to the tournament. And you know what happens? They end up in tier 3 of the Pac-12.
Yeah.
That's a regional thing, and you can continue to joke it and clip it if you want, but that's a regional discrepancy there. So if you guys want to continue doing that, you can.
Oh, it's going to be all season long.
You know who else?
All season long.
The last 2 Xavier teams.
Yeah, I actually thought about last year's Xavier team.
Come on,
because
that team had
the
too
fact
much
that
talent.
they got hot at the end and won the NIT just straight through and beat some pretty good teams, like they have to be up there.
Oh, Kobe Jones, Zach Freemantle, Jack Dungy, Adam Kunkel. I mean, and we'll see what their point guard situation is heading into this year. But like, I think unfortunately we're going to find out that Travis Steele just wasn't the answer here. That team was way too talented. They fell off a cliff in the Big East. I mean, they started
every year,
back-to-back years of starting the season like 10-1, and then going. Like, you have to be bad in the Big East to not make the tournament after starting 10-1. If you even go 500 in the conference, you're going to get a ticket to the dance. Yeah. And they just were bad in conference play the last couple of years. Bad. Terrible February.
Yep. All right. Listen, make sure that you go check out our merch store. Make sure you go check out the Field of 68 Daily. If you want the Almanac, the only place that you need to go to be able to get your preview for the college basketball season. All of those links are in the description below. As always, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this with all of your friends, every single one of them. And we will see you guys again next week to find out what else T.O. pronounces funny.
Tire.